Dave Kendricks was upset. Angie Nee, or Miss Nee as she was commonly called by her co-workers, was a very secretive woman. Was she straight, lesbian, married, single, dating? No one knew, but outwardly she was so prim and proper that no one dared to ask her. She was popular, though, and a fairly recent addition to the staff at their workplace. She looked at Dave and realized that something was wrong with him. It was something that bothered him deeply. She had been working at Good & Company for a few months now and had gotten to know all of her coworkers, but she thought Dave was special. He was handsome, kind, considerate, warm, and compassionate. That day he looked very upset, angry, and exhausted. There was something about Miss Nee that no one, not even Miss Nee herself, understood. She was an empath and could read people like a book. She read Dave and knew he was hurting. If she could help people through their pain, she was all for it. "Hey, Dave, want some coffee?" He looked at her, grinned briefly, and replied, "Sure. Why wouldn't I? There's always time for coffee with an attractive young woman." She smiled back, and they headed to the first floor of the office building where there was a coffee shop that served the best coffee Dave had ever tasted. As they sat down at a table, Miss Nee said, "Dave, I can't help but notice that you seem a little depressed right now. Maybe you want to get something out of your head." He looked thoughtful for a while before answering. "I actually need someone to talk to. I'm just going crazy keeping all this stuff to myself." "I wasn't always a bachelor. I married in my youth my high school sweetheart, Carla Street. Barring meeting and marrying Carla, my high school years were mostly pretty shitty. Somehow I acquired my own nemesis named Curtis King. He was something of a super jock, so all of his shitty behavior seemed like an indulgence. He bullied me, slapped me around, stole my lunch money, and took away my dates a lot. I wasn't a bad guy, but he was built like a Greek god and was a catch for the girls, and rumored to be a catch for some of the female employees. He managed to seduce Carla and steal her away from me. She expressed her regret, but moved in with Curtis and we divorced. After high school, Curtis and I went to different colleges. I studied computer science and Curtis studied some humanities crap at another school, but on a soccer scholarship. While I was in college, I met Carol Jones, a fellow student who went to our school, but we never revolved in the same circle, so we never dated. We started dating and got married when we got our degrees. Moving home was always in our plans. I already had a job planned here, he pointed upward, and Carol got a job at the family business. We got married when we moved back to the city. "So what happened?" Miss Nee asked. "I think it's obvious something didn't go to plan." Dave shook his head. "Everything went wrong. Curtis came home to our town when he was let go from the soccer team he played for on the West Coast because he wasn't as good as he thought he was. Unfortunately, he was perceived as a conquering hero back in his hometown, and Carol's father gave him a job in his sales department." "Oh dear," Miss Nee said. "I think I'm guessing what happened." "Yes, it was horrible. I was completely dumbfounded by the whole thing. I came home from work one day and Carol handed me the divorce papers. She said she had met a better man and was leaving me for him. And yes, it was Curtis King." Miss Nee nodded and looked him in the eye, encouraging him to continue. "The divorce happened, but Curtis couldn't let it happen. He wrested my wife from me, but he couldn't let it go. Even though he won, he had to go further. One dark night on my way home from work, I got mugged. The shit was beaten out of me. I needed eye surgery to repair a detached retina. My right lung collapsed due to a broken rib, my right arm was broken, and my skull had a hairline fracture." "So it wasn't a robbery?" "They didn't actually take anything, except my dignity, so I don't believe it was a robbery. I think it was either Curtis or a gang of thugs he hired." "What did your ex think of what happened to you?" "Nothing that surprised me. She didn't say anything." "Nothing?" Miss Nee was indignant. "Yeah, nothing, not a damn thing. It makes me wonder if she knew her boyfriend was involved but didn't contact me out of guilt, or did she not care?" "Quite possibly," Miss Nee said. "When did all this happen?" 2 years ago, about 6 months before you came to work here, I think." "Right. So it was quite a while before I came to work here. But that's not all, is it?" He nodded sullenly. "Yes. Apparently my ex and her lover are still together. I deliberately didn't follow them because, truth be told, I didn't want to know anything about them. Now I've found out that they're going to get married. How did you find that out? Who told you? He shuddered involuntarily. Carol told me. The bitch sent me a wedding invitation and a personal letter. Shit, said Miss Nee. What a bitch! You wouldn't happen to have the invitation and letter with you, would you? As it happens, I do. They're in my pocket. Would you like to read them? Miss Nee nodded and smiled slyly. Oh, yes, please, I'd love to. She glanced at the invitation, which was, as the British say, bog standard. But a letter? Oh, hell no. It was a monstrous letter. Dear Dave, I'm writing to let you know that Curtis and I are finally getting married. I know it didn't work out, but let's face it, you and I never should have gotten married in the first place. We were too young. I knew almost from day one of our married life that we shouldn't have gotten married, and I knew I wanted something more. And that something more for me was a real man like Curtis King. I'm not saying this to offend you, and I'm sure you'll find another woman who better matches your meek and mild nature, but that wasn't me. Curtis, with his determination, his ability to take charge and do his best right now, was perfect for me. However, I am sorry for the way our marriage ended, and Curtis and I really want to bury the hatchet by inviting you to our wedding. You and Curtis will have a lot of catching up to do. If you have a girlfriend, please bring her along. Love, Carol. Miss Nee sighed and said, Bullshit, and a total bitch besides. She handed the card and letter back to Dave. Dave, we are friends. No one at our work has any idea of my history, how I ended up in your town, what my life story is. I'm going to visit you at your apartment tonight after work because I'm going to tell you about my life story and the plan I'm devising to frame Carol and Curtis and get back at you and get a little revenge on myself. Is that okay with you? Dave agreed. After all, getting the upper hand on his nemesis and ex-wife was something he could very well agree to. 6 weeks passed, and the wedding took place. It was a glitzy party, and Curtis made a fool of himself by flirting with every woman, but especially his newlywed wife's ex-husband, Dave Kendricks. To the disgust of many in attendance at the wedding, with the exception of former high school athletes who patted Curtis on the back and said, "Good job, man." Curtis disappeared with Angie Nee, the companion of his arch-rival. Dave looked upset. Carol walked over to him and led him outside for some privacy. I'm sorry, Dave, but it looks like the best man has defeated the beautiful maiden again. A look of bewilderment appeared on Dave's face. Are you not embarrassed by the fact that your husband is sleeping with my date? During your own wedding reception? What a wedding feast you're having. She shook her head. Oh, Dave, that's just old-fashioned thinking. Yes, Curtis, my Curtis is having fun with your girlfriend right now, but I know for a fact that after he's done with her, he'll come back to me and regain me as his bride. Dave said, What about my relationship with Angie? What does he hope to accomplish by taking her away from me? I'm not quite sure, Dave, but for some reason he wants to fuck you at every opportunity. But why? What the hell have I done to him? Nothing. But that's the beauty of it, don't you see? You just pick a dude at random as a target and keep having him. And yes, you were right. It was Curtis and a couple of his buddies who beat you up that night. Why? Because he wanted to once again assert his superiority over you. Anyway, let's go back inside and I'll let you dance with me. For old time's sake, of course. Sure, Dave said. A somewhat odd expression appeared on Dave's face. If Carol had bothered to look at Dave, she might have seen that expression and wondered what the hell was really going on. But she didn't, and the moment was lost. It was obvious to anyone who cared to look. She was so far in her own shit that even smoke signals wouldn't have gotten her attention. They had one dance. It was stilted, awkward, and Dave felt he deserved a drink or two after an experience that would never be repeated. There was chatter all around, a murmur of different, slightly angry voices, many of which seemed to be condemning the missing groom. Carol's father approached Dave and apologized on behalf of himself and her mother, who was officially indisposed and therefore unable to attend the wedding. In fact, he confided to Dave his wife hated Curtis and wanted Carol never to be seen with him. Dave felt sorry for Mr. Jones. Of course, there were many things he could have said to Mr. Jones, but Dave decided that silence would be the best course of action. Eventually, Curtis and Miss Nee reappeared, both splitting the time of their arrival so as not to appear at the same time and cause undue embarrassment to the blushing bride. Miss Nee lowered her head, looked at Dave, and whispered, "I'm really, really sorry, Dave. Shouldn't we leave?" Dave looked at her indignantly, and they both left. Outside, his facade crumbled, and the further scene was best left to the imagination. Did he laugh? Yes, he laughed, curious. A week later, Mrs. Curtis King was sitting in a sidewalk cafe, sipping English breakfast tea, waiting for the person who had invited her to afternoon tea to show up. A few minutes late, Miss Nee walked over to the table and sat down facing Carol. They sent each other an air kiss, and Carol said, "Okay, what do you want?" "If you want to have more sex with my husband, I can see why you want to. He's very good in the bedroom, but I'm not crazy about the idea." Miss Nee shook her head. "Oh, I don't want any further acts of sex with your husband, but in the interest of full disclosure, I must inform you that all the sexual acts we have had have been without prophylactics." At this point, Carol looked puzzled and asked, "What?" Miss Nee replied, "Well, you know, a kitten mitten, a glove with one finger, a rubber band, a condom." "Oh," Carol said. "I didn't expect it from him because he's a strong, manly guy, a real man who always wants naked sex. Anyway, he made me his bride that same night and several times a day since then, I tell you." "Right, a real man, huh? Well, I have to tell you that on your wedding day we did it 6 times. We did it in every corner of the bridal suite." Carol looked puzzled. "Why are you telling me this? Oh shit, you're telling me you're pregnant? What the fuck is that wimpy guy? I mean Dave, thinking about that." Miss Nee shook her head and replied, "I'm not pregnant. And since Dave and I aren't dating, what Dave thinks doesn't matter. And Dave isn't a wuss. He just made a bad choice when he asked you to marry him." Carol was already starting to get angry and embarrassed. "But why are you telling me all this? Especially if you're not dating Dave." "I'll tell you a little story about myself. I was married to a handsome man, very similar to Curtis in facial features and also, unfortunately, in behavior. Although we were married, he couldn't keep himself in his pants, and he eventually came back to me with a very unusual gift. It was a gift that wouldn't stop working, so I threw the miserable little bastard out." Carol's face lost color. "My God! You mean he gave you herpes?" At that moment, a smirk appeared on Miss Nee's face that would have frightened a gargoyle in a medieval cathedral. "No, dear. Kevin, my ex-husband, gave me HIV, which in my case turned into full-blown AIDS. After I found out what you and your piece of shit lover and later husband Curtis did to Dave, who was actually a good guy and didn't deserve the shit sandwich you tried to make him choke on, I decided to take matters into my own hands, how shall I put it? During our time together, Curtis promised to drive me to death. In fact, I fucked him to death. And probably you, too. Have a nice life." Miss Nee rose from the table and with a swift step left the already disintegrating life of Curtis and Carol King. As Carol burst into tears and tried to remember how to dial Curtis's phone number, Miss Nee ironically hummed, "Like a virgin," to herself. She had forgotten to tell Carol that her ex-husband Kevin had been found shot to death in a tragic shooting in Detroit, Michigan. It was believed to be a tragic case of mistaken identity while he was on a business trip. But Miss Nee knew the truth. Miss Nee said goodbye to Dave, they shook hands, and he kissed her on the cheek, after which Miss Nee disappeared from his life and from the life of their mutual employer. Which was just in time, because HR really wanted to talk to her about her Social Security number, because there was a problem with it. Wasn't there? Curtis beat the snot out of Carol and went to jail, yeah. You're a real man's Curtis. Way to go, man. Did Miss Nee, whoever she really was, pass HIV to Curtis and threw him to Carol? They sweated and waited for the results. The cops asked Dave what he knew about Miss Nee. He shrugged and, in the presence of a lawyer, made a statement excusing himself from any wrongdoing. The police were looking for Miss Nee, but an officer who knew a lot about crossword puzzles pointed out that Miss Nee was an anagram of nemesis, and he doubted they would ever find her. Carol tried to sue Dave, but her lawyer advised her to back off if she didn't want her own secrets exposed, like what she knew about the attack on Dave. How come Miss Nee came to town exactly when she did? Why did she get involved with Curtis and Carol? Sometimes life doesn't have everything wrapped up in a pretty bow.